Well, I was in here playing because we had two options with this and with this. And if you can believe it, the sound is so much better on this little tiny thing than what I would have assumed would have much better sound. So
Yeah, mine didn't
that's,
have great sound last month.
didn't it? Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's, I don't know, you get a room this big and there's just a lot going on. And then like if there's talking in different places, then it's even worse. So fingers crossed it will work well.
Last night. 24 hours.
Good, good. Good, how are you?
Most of the glacier was so close.
Shorts and purple stuff.
Yeah, that was helpful, by the way. So I just kind of, I simplified it a lot. It's just eliminated it. All right.
That's funny.
Okay, so.
Good. I can't believe the forest was here. You get a lot of thoughts and the fireworks turn on.
Yeah, it wasn't our fault. So, not so much.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's probably smart, but-
I mean, they like it was a lot higher elevation than the last one.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Because so everybody of our race events, so we kind of used to it.
Mhm.
I think some people are hoping the next week do it.
Oh, yeah.
Turned out that was, they were doing on Labor Day.
I decided not to miss the fourth.
Well, that's good.
I was thinking.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Is how it-
Yeah, so
Because I
that's-
have a giant rodeo.
Yeah.
And the.
We actually need to queue up some girl. Yeah, we had fun, yeah, Katie was, when she, my parents liked it up there. Yeah.
Where's that supposed to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Just-
yeah, I didn't need that shape. Yeah, she's cool. Yeah, sometimes that's. Yeah, I had that happen to me in up in New Orleans. I had that twice at the same house. So the second time was good.
Yeah. he left early.
One time.
Guys traveling once in a yeah. That's one reason yeah.
How are you?
Okay, looks like we have 5 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call the meeting over. Please. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to point out the Godfrey Public Schools is the cornerstone of a proud, passionate, progressive community where students and staff thrive in a positive and innovative environment. We ensure the growth of all individuals by inspiring them to own and maximize their potential. We do have a copy of the open meetings law posted, and the agenda is available to the public. With that, we consider a motion to approve the agenda as presented. So moved. Second. Moved by Devin, second by John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Meeting's closed. Oh. Did you get it, Dave?
My question is, oh, I'm on the pledge and the,
Oh.
and the pledge are the same.
That's all right.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Mayor Mills, thank you. Voting is closed, unanimous vote to approve the agenda as presented.
Great. I'm moving on to address the recognition of visitors. May I have any public comment today? Okay, seeing none, moving on to action items. Action item 4.1, the consent agenda. Consider motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved by Becky, second by Kelly. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed, unanimous vote to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Great. Moving on to personnel. Mrs. Venus, do we have anything for 4.2.1?
Nope.
4.2.2?
Nope.
Okay, moving on with 4.2.3. Set substitute salaries for the 2022-23 school year. Mrs. Venus.
All right, so substitute salaries last year were $120 per day and $155 for 10 consecutive days last year. As we dove in, obviously, you guys know that was a challenge last year, ensuring that we had substitutes in the classroom. And by the time we hit Thanksgiving, I forget the exact numbers, but there were hundreds of hours of time that our classroom teachers had spent in classrooms with higher subs. And so in looking at some other districts in the area, kind of pulled together some of the incentives or things that they were able to provide that we had not necessarily considered previously. And then reached out to all of our subs that are on our list currently and asked them, what would it take, or what do we need to look at to encourage you to take more days in our district as opposed to a neighboring district? And their feedback was two things. They said that our daily rate was not like where other districts were, which was accurate. And the other piece was a lot of other districts will up the amount that they are getting based on cumulative number of days in the district. Previously, the only time they got the higher rate was if they were here for 10 days uninterrupted in the same assignment. So for like a maternity leave. But in other districts, once you hit a certain number of days total, you get that bump for the rest of the year. And so the proposal here is that we would set a daily rate to $145 per day, and that we would then look at 30 cumulative days in the district for that higher rate of $175 or 10 consecutive days of assignment, such as maternity. Both being that same rate of $175 once they hit each of those. We hope that this will be what it takes to encourage our current sub pool to take some additional days in our district and maybe entice some others to sign on to help substitute as well. Certainly is a need in our district, and we hope that this will make it more entertaining for some. Questions?
What kind of rates are you seeing around? Is this kind of indicative of other schools or?
Yes. I don't know what they're setting their rates out for this year.
That's, I don't, yeah, if you're catching up. Or,
I think we need to address this again in October. If we're out more, we have like a 7 months, so we want to consider again if needed. Any other questions or feedback? I would entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Second. And moved by Kelly and second by John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to set substitute salaries to $145 per day, $175 per day after 30 consecutive days or 10 consecutive days.
Great.
Oh, cumulative, I'm sorry, it's the wrong word.
Moving on to action item 4.4, discuss, consider dismissing school at 2:30 on Friday, December 23rd. This is Jones.
Yeah, so more staffing pieces. Football officials are really difficult to find right now. If anybody's interested, that'd be great. And so we actually have one game where we were not able to get a night game because there were no officials available. Those are booked in February every year. It's kind of a crazy deal. But this was one game that we could not get night officials for. And so our game time is actually set at 3 p.m. Mr. Rajek asked if there was potential that we could dismiss early that day to clear out the parking lot so that fans have somewhere to park, get our students out so that they can either be at the game or watch their siblings, that sort of thing. So just asking if we could please dismiss that 2:30 time that day to accommodate that kind of random game.
Makes sense. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, consider motion to approve as presented. So, moved by Kyle, second by Becky. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is closed, and this vote to approve a 2:30 dismissal on Friday, September 3rd.
Great. Moving on to action item 4.5, consider approval of an agreement, the negotiated agreement that would allow for a stipend to be paid to teachers teaching college classes. Mrs. Jones.
All right, so in prior years, our teachers that were teaching college credit courses here on campus were paid directly from the institution that was awarding that credit. However, Central Community College has eliminated this option this year, and they're requiring that their stipend, their amount be sent to the school, and that the school distribute that out. That does fall under our negotiated agreement, and there is a discrepancy between what the college is paying and what our teachers have previously been paid. And so we did request that the GEA would approve an amendment that's attached here that would allow us to keep that compensation the same as what they've been paid previously, with the difference being that they would be paid through the school district rather than through the institution or the college credit.
And that was agreed to by the GEA.
Correct. Yep. And the signed copy is
Any other questions for Mrs. Jones on that?
Not necessarily related to some community college, but I know we've been working with it plans to try to see if that's an option. How's that going?
Yep, I visited with their president the other day, and he too is doing some digging. Apparently, it's not a very common question, and so we're trying to figure out where you start that process.
Moving forward with our strategic plan.
That's right.
All right, consider motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Becky, second by Devin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed, and this vote to approve an amendment to the 22-23 negotiated agreement as presented.
Great. Move on to action item 4.6. District 20 has been a Nebraska Rural Community Association's member for many years. NERCSA provides many services for rural school districts. Mrs. Jones.
So,
I read it wrong. That's a long day already. I'm sorry. Discuss, consider, and approve membership for NERCSA for the 2022-2023 school year. Mrs. Jones.
all right, I think you covered it, Mr. White. So yes, NERCSA, we've been a member for many years. Because this is a different district membership, I like to bring it to the board for approval. It stands for Nebraska Rural Community Schools Association. So it is small schools that do provide some legislative leadership and advocacy that's really beneficial. I did attach a benefits of membership document there. And this is not a change from previous years, but just seeking approval to rejoin for the upcoming school year.
Great. Yeah, then the organization will be a part of it. Any questions for Mrs. Jones on this? Now we'll consider a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Moved by John, second by Becky. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to approve membership with NERCSA for the 22-23 school year.
Great, moving on to action item 4.7. Discuss and consider approval of the purchase and installation of vape detectors. Mrs. Jones.
All right, so something new. We've been working to find a product that would work with our specific building design. We think about all the concrete walls that we have, and Wi-Fi, and it was a challenge to find something that would work for us in this setting, but we have found something. Many area schools have vape detectors that are installed, they're typically in locker rooms and restrooms. And this would allow us to install in those locations in the secondary building. We also have some mobile units that are able to be moved around to other locations if there's an issue. It is a challenge at the 7-12 level, and I think that these detectors would certainly provide a safer environment for our students by deterring that kind of behavior and encouraging more safe behavior. So it would be my recommendation to move forward with the purchase and installation before school starts in August.
When a vape detector goes off, what's that look like? Or what's
Yeah.
cameras and stuff?
Well, this is being posted, I don't know if I want.
Okay.
Essentially what happens is everybody who's set up will get a notification on their phone that in such and such location, something's been detected. It does detect a wide array of things from nicotine vape to marijuana vape, any kind of aerosol sort of thing. And so we'll get a notification on our phone, and whenever administrator or counselor or whoever has that set up on their phone would head into that location and intervene.
Are there issues with false alarms, something in hairspray, and apparatus?
Yes. Don't be giving any ideas.
Do you have any increase
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll consider a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Marilyn, second by Kelly. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess we'll, this does work in concert with our drug plan.
There's more.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to approve the purchase and installation of vape detectors.
Great. Moving on to action item 4.8. Discuss and consider approval of an amendment to the existing memorandum of understanding. Mrs. Jones.
All right, so we did have our town hall meeting on Thursday, June 16th, with several items that the Board's Impact Center Committee wished to address both before that meeting, but more importantly, the feedback we received really guided this process. And so the two things that really came up, we wanted to make sure that we addressed were first, ensuring the governing structure includes school representative, school board representative, and either the mayor or city council member. It's very important that the interlocal agency board represents our community and does not permit outside influence from agencies or organizations. So that was a main topic of conversation. The second piece was that we really wanted to see a process in place for review and approval of the preschool curriculum that involves the teachers, the director, and the board, and allows for annual review. So we were able to put together an amendment rather than a new agreement And the Impact Center Committee met just this afternoon to continue to make sure that this reflected and represented what we wanted it to. The pieces that we have, you want me to go through those? Or do you want to go through?
Sure.
Okay. The pieces that we have written into the amendment, the third paragraph would change our annual contribution or our total contribution from 900,000 to 1.5 million. That would be provided over 5 years at $300,000 per year. Also in paragraph 3, we would change this last sentence to read such commitments will be contingent upon GECLC successfully fundraising the remaining portion of the campaign funds and will be paid at such times and in such amounts as the parties intend to further agree at a later date. It would also amend paragraph 4 to reflect the school's operating assistance to include in-kind services that are limited to lawn care, pest control, snow removal, and access to maintenance staff for assistance in diagnosing and assessing facility issues and performing routine maintenance based on the availability of school district resources. And then we would be adding a paragraph 7, contingencies paragraph, that the aforementioned amendments and the MOU are fully contingent upon the following criteria will be evaluated on an annual basis by the governing board of the school prior to any monetary contributions being made. The first one is governing structure. There are 2 governing structures that we're going to talk about in this paragraph. The first is the interlocal agency board. So the interlocal agency contemplated to be created in paragraph 2 shall be governed by a board of directors comprised of at least 4 members. The interlocal agency board shall consist of the mayor of the city or a member of the city council, the city administrator, a member of the school board, and an administrator of the school. Each such individual person called a director. The Impact Center's governing board, so this is the second board that we're discussing, would consist of at least 7 members. The Impact Center's governing board shall include at least 1 appointed administrative staff member from the city and 1 from the school. All members of both boards must be individuals living within the school district boundaries. The curriculum selection and development is the other piece we wanted to make sure to address. The Impact Center's teachers and director will review and propose preschool curriculum for ages 3 through 5 on an annual basis to the Impact Center's governing board, at which time said governing board shall review and propose that curriculum to the interlocal agency's governing board. The Impact Center's governing board will provide evidence of the effectiveness of that curriculum or lack thereof in an annual report to the interlocal agency's board before June 15th of each year. No preschool curriculum may be implemented by the Impact Center without approval by the board of the interlocal agency. So the reason for having both boards represented and listed within this document is the checks and balances system. So essentially the directors and the teachers who are boots on the ground every day, they have that experience. They know what they want to be using. They would propose that curriculum to the Impact Center's board, but the Impact Center's board then also has to take that to the interlocal board as well for approval. And so it narrows the amount of people that are looking at that information and provides the checks and balances system to ensure that the curriculum being used reflects something that we feel is of added value. Questions about the MOU for myself or the committee?
So the Impact Center governing board, you have city, school, and others, what do you see there?
Yeah, so in our conversations with Colton, it sounds like those others would be community at large members. They would still need to be people who live in our community, my understanding. And they would be maybe local donors or maybe not local donors. You want to add to that? And I don't feel like that's been completely hammered out other than they must be living within school district boundaries.
I think the details for what that exact structure is going to be are still yet to be determined. And that's where I think having the interlocal board, they would approve the lease on an annual basis and approve the curriculum. I think that's probably more defined at this point in time. So I think that gives us a good level of comfort to be able to move forward, not knowing exactly for sure how the impact
Is the MOU on the Impact Center website?
It is not, but it is on our Spark website, where you get the board agendas.
Because it's not connected to the one tonight that I'm seeing.
After the meeting, I'll review. Or all of myself, one of the two. Thank you, yes.
So really the main role of just the impact mitigation board, is to hire and oversee the growth plan. That's my understanding.
I think we had a draft of the amendment to the MOU that was published, and then our committee's actually met today and refined it further. So what would have been available yesterday is going to be different than what's finalized. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Substantial time spent, I think, trying to make sure that those teeth are in there with school, especially with the Impact Center getting board and some staff specific call out that staff needs to have the, like you said, who's on the ground understanding of what's going on there and needs kind of local board where representation from the schools is vitally important. But financial benefits of this don't come through unless the thing's successful, and that success is really not only if there's some oversight to be sure that that's happening or there's something. Thanks for putting this together. So,
Anything else from anyone else on the board? No, consider motion to approve as presented. So,
second.
moved by Kyle, second by John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to approve the proposed amendment to the existing MOU as presented.
Moving on to action items under policy. First one, 5.1, discuss and consider approval of the required 2021-2022 policy updates. Mrs. Jones.
Just when you thought we were done with policy for a little while, in come the updates, and we have 2 years worth of updates to consider. And so they are lengthy, and my auctioneer was ready, so I'll give you summaries. The 2005 policy conflict of interest, a lot of these are, all of these are required, but a lot of these are just verbiage changes to align with law. So that's what happened with conflict of interest. It eliminated the phrase direct pecuniary fee or commission and replaced it with payment fee or commission. 2008 meetings simply states after LD 83 was passed that the minutes would be available within 10 working days and for at least 6 months. That is in line with our current operating procedure. That's not a change, but we do have to update our policy. 2010 preparation for board meetings states that agendas will be available at least 24 hours before the school board meeting. We post those on Spark, and that is in alignment of what's required and available for at least 6 months. We leave ours up, they don't come down. 3001 budget and property tax request. This updated policy includes details about the process that boards must now follow in making property tax requests. That's changed pretty significantly, and so there's a lot of detail in there that we will work through in August and September. 3003.1 and 3004.1 have to do with construction. There's just a lot of information in our federal purchasing and procurement policies that have to be updated. That will not change anything that we had in our previous policy, which just adds additional detail. 3012 school meal program, we needed to include notice that households can apply for these and 3,043 are construction management at-risk contracts and design build contracts. Simply states that if we decide to go with either of these, the board must pass a resolution that includes a statement the school board has made a determination that either of these is the right way to go based on savings in cost or time or requirement of specialized or complex construction methods. 4,056, resignation of certificated staff, updates the date to March 15th. I feel like a broken record here, but it's getting more and more difficult to find staff. And so this just ensures that our district is put in a good place in order to find a replacement if we need to. So if we receive a letter back, we can't ask for that before March 15th, but after we receive that letter back, it locks that teacher in for the following year. 5,012, testing and assessment program. This simply is wording change that aligns with Rule 10. 5063, audio and video recordings, updates the policy to prohibit inappropriate uses of recordings while permitting appropriate uses, consistent with administrative discretion. That could be like a Zoom recording of a classroom for a student who is remote learning. It also outlines not appropriate recording. 6021, district criteria for selecting evaluators to be used for special education evaluation and verification and independent educational evaluations. This policy is updated to state that our evaluation protocols will be kept in case they are requested. And that was not the case prior, so that will be a change in practice. 6036, reading instruction and intervention services. Kindergarten is now allowed the first 45 days for their first assessment with regards to reading, whereas first, second, and third graders continues to be within 30 calendar days. So that's just an update. And then the last one is a form update, not a policy update, but public comment rule. KSB is asking that anybody seeking to make a public comment must provide their name, address, and any name of organization they represent prior to addressing the questions on policy updates for 2021 and 2022.
The 3001 budget property tax request, is that all, was that electronic changes, electronic posting on materials, is that what that was supposed to be?
So there was a change, I can't remember the number, I think it's 44 passed, and if we go over a 2% increase as a total with the city and the school, you have to have a joint public tax hearing, and so it's very complicated. I'm not sure anyone understands it very well yet, but we're all learning, so that will be a process. And it will likely result, just a heads up, will result in about 2 days at the end of September, 27th or 28th, where we'll need to have a special meeting to approve our budget, just based on the timelines that are outlined within that law.
And then does that take the place of our budget hearing?
It does.
If we do the multi-entity, that is the budget hearing for. Any other questions on any of the policies? Appreciate all the updates on the work with KSP. With that, we entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Kelly, second by Becky. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to approve proposed policy updates as presented.
Moving on to procedural item 5.2, the first reading of policy 5026, extracurricular drug testing program. Mrs. Jones.
Thanks, Mr. Wyatt. This is the first reading of policy 5026, extracurricular drug testing program. This is not a new policy for our district, however, it is a new and updated policy through KSB. And so there are no significant changes to our current procedures, but we have updated the forms and added some clarifying language, as well as the sport of tennis to our proposed policy. As a first reading, there is no action at this time. Any questions on this policy?
One conversation we had in the policy committee was part of that is the drug policy different than tobacco and different than alcohol?
Yes, it is. So we separated those two out. So the drug and alcohol is going to be handled through our student discipline policy, whereas the drug testing policy is separate and it has different procedures that are listed in there. If a student, they're not necessarily going to be suspended for a positive test from school. Now, they will be suspended from activities if they test positive, and it walks through what those steps are. The student shares that it's going to be a positive test or comes clean about that. They do not miss practice. If they don't come clean about it and we go through the process, then they do miss practice. And it walks through the first, hold up here, I think it's 10 days the first time around and 15 the second. 10 the first time, 15 the second. And then a refusal to test, as always, is a student positive. That's what we have done in the past as well. So no changes to our current procedures other than adding some clarifying language. Our previous policy had a frequently asked questions document that went with it, and so we tried to work those pieces into the policy itself.
KSB created this on our behalf and we modified it.
Both. So I shared our old policy, they shared their new policies. Mr. Marachek and I went through and combined into what we felt represented our district the best, and then sent it off to them for approval. Their feedback was that we needed to remove, as Mr. White mentioned, we needed to remove any reference to drug and alcohol use or, an MIP or anything like that. So we pulled all of that out and kept it completely separate. And then they gave us.
There were hooks into the handbook, I think. Previously, that's something.
Still reference in the handbook to drug and alcohol use, and also to this policy.
Consequences are identical for any of the infractions, whether that's a positive test infraction, MIP, travel tobacco.
They're actually not.
They're not.
No, they're determined separately. So the MIP, because they're both dealing with activities and not school. So I guess the MIP would be a similar infraction, but if a student were caught with drugs or alcohol at school, that falls under a discipline policy. Far more restrictive.
Any other questions?
Thanks for updating it.
Glad Mr. Rajek is the one that realized we had not adopted a new drug policy or drug testing policy, so just picking up on that. I agree with you, that's where we before.
Okay, would you consider a motion to approve as presented?
Just
Or, yeah, procedural, sorry.
Yep.
First strike tonight, right? Okay, next procedural item, 5.3, the first reading of policy 6037, selection and review of library materials. Mrs. Schwartz.
All right, thank you. So it's no secret, over the last several months, library media materials have come under scrutiny in many districts. Our district has had formal operating procedures for decades, but those procedures have never been formally adopted as board policy. So this policy applies only to library materials. It has no bearing or impact on core curriculum materials or curriculum-related supplements. Those are covered in separate board policies. This is the first reading of this proposed policy. It really would help formalize our process and provide a procedure for a request of review of material for a patron of the district or a parent of a current student. And so this just goes through the process of how that would work. We, as a board committee, had selected the principal review option. So the school librarian, media specialist, or any individual requesting library materials would be responsible for submitting the request in writing to the building principal. And it has to include include the name of the book, material resource, the author, publisher, supplier, the physical medium, so if it's a book or magazine, video game, digital subscription, video, a game, or digital subscription, the cost of the material, and then of course a summary of the content of the material, including how it supports age-appropriate learning objectives, which is the curriculum, and or supports the student development and learning. Additionally, they would share any accolades of that work and whether the content of the material represents a perspective that may not be universal, such as a political, religious, or social perspective for which disagreement or differences of opinion exist, which simply allow the principal to have some context as they make their decision. That review then, of course, if a parent had a concern, they would be able to fill out a form that asks for that material to be reviewed, and then there's a process in place for a response on those materials. Someone can request up to 5 materials to be reviewed at one time. Again, we've had these procedures in place previously. This would not be new practice. We'd be adjusting our procedures to make them more formal, but it would not be a new procedure for this district, just looking to formalize it in more policy. Questions on this? Questions or that you want to review?
Any other questions or comments? On the committee? Okay, moving on with no action taken. First reading of policy 4064, transporting students and employee vehicles. Mrs. Jones.
Yes, thank you. So, in visiting with KSB, one policy that seems to be getting a lot of questions is 4064. This piece of this policy is actually new. However, the Rule 91 that governs this is not new. The Nebraska Department of Education has had the same rules for a long time, but they're just now becoming a little bit more liberal in how they determine what that policy means or that rule means. So they are now interpreting that rule to mean any employee that has a student in their vehicle that does not live with them. So let me give you some examples. If I live in the country and my neighbor kiddos come to school with me each day, that's considered a public transport of students. Even though I'm not a teacher in that moment, even though I'm in my personal vehicle, it's still considered public transport of a student under Rule 91. And so what that means is that we're required to provide training to anybody that could potentially be that person. If I give a kid a ride home from school, so me personally, as a parent, if I took a student home to have a play date or something, that falls under this. So just very much changing how they look at that definition. And so our take is that we want to train every single staff member. If you work in this district, you take the training so that you're covered. And so we had 2 options with this policy. The first one was that employees could not have other students in their vehicle ever. I'm not sure that makes sense in rural Nebraska a lot of times, but maybe we're headed to a ball game, that sort of thing. So the alternative is to provide the training to every single staff member that works in this district, and also to adopt this policy. So.
Is the training extensive or an online course?
Great question. It is a 2-hour training, and we worked to create a quiz that they would take at the end to verify that they had watched the training and that they had the competency needed to be able to transport students. Any other questions on that policy? Or is a new policy, this is just the first reading or?
Do they have to take the training every year?
Yes. And there's a lot of those.
Okay, moving on with the action taken. Next is an action item 5.6. Discuss and consider approval of the 2022-2023 student handbook. Mrs. Jones.
You mind if I back you up just 1 to 5.5?
Long day. Procedure item again, 5.5, annual review of parental and family engagement policy. Mrs. Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wyatt. So every year we need to review this policy, and so this is our annual review. And the school district recognizes the importance of parental and guardian involvement in the education of their children. The school district will take the following steps to ensure that the rights of parents and guardians to participate in the education of their child are preserved. So parents and guardians will be provided access as described in district procedures to district approved textbooks and other curricular materials and tests used in the district upon request. Goes on to define what those are. And parents and guardians will be permitted within the district procedures to attend and observe courses, assemblies, counseling sessions, and other instructional activities. Parents and guardians will be permitted within district procedures to ask that their children be excused from school experiences that parents find objectionable. Will be informed through the student handbook and district policies of the manner that the district will provide access to records of students. Informed of the standardized and criteria reference district testing program. Parents may request additional information from the local principal. Parents and guardians will be informed of the circumstances under which they may opt out of state and federal assessments. And parents and guardians will be notified of their right to remove their children from surveys prior to district participation in surveys. And that the principal must approve those surveys and that the participation of those surveys is voluntary. No changes to this policy. It was approved in our June meeting. Any questions on our parental involvement policy?
It's not changed?
It has not changed. It's just an annual review. We're required to review it.
Like I said, look very familiar.
It should look extremely familiar.
So much less one than last year. Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on to no action taken. We do have an action item 5.6 and discuss and consider approval of the 2022-2023 student handbook. Mrs. Jones.
No changes from last month to that student handbook. We are working to get those finalized so that we can get them printed, but no substantive changes with the document.
Any questions for Mrs. Jones? Hearing none, would consider a motion to approve as presented. So moved. Moved by Kyle, second by Becky. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to approve the 22-23 student handbook as presented.
Great. Moving on to the next agenda item, the procedural item is the first reading of the 2022-2023 activity. Mrs. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Yep, this is just the first reading of our activity handbook. We've now aligned it with our new board policies. The formal motion is needed at this time. We'll return to this in August for consideration of approval. So if there is any feedback, we would be happy to take that now. This handbook is really put together by KSB, and we go through and customize it based on our district and our procedures. So just bringing this in alignment with the policy.
Anybody have any questions on that? Moving on. To 5.8. First reading of the 2022-2023 staff handbook. Mrs. Jones.
All right, this, as you mentioned, is the first reading. We've now aligned our staff handbook with new board policies as well. A difference here is in the past, we have had a certificated and non-certificated handbook, both, and so we've combined them into one, similar to what we did with the elementary and secondary handbooks. So just looking to streamline the process. And so this handbook actually details in different places the specific pieces that delineate one from the other. But the majority of the handbook really applies to all staff.
Any questions on that tonight? Moving on to the first reading of the 2022-2023 staff handbook. We did that.
Yep.
5.9, discuss and consider approval of teacher and administrator evaluation documents. Mrs. Jones.
If the agenda wasn't so long, it'd be easier, right? There's a few things on there today. 5.9 is just our evaluation documents. This is as much procedural as it is an action item every year. It's important for us to put these in front of you so that you know how we are evaluating our staff. I've attached all of our evaluation documents here. The one that's missing is our administrator our administrator evaluation tool. NDE has been working on a new process that they would like districts to use, and they have not quite rolled that out yet. And so we don't want to spend time changing our process until we see what that's going to look like. We're really hoping that we'll get some of that feedback and information at administrator days at the end of the month. So I anticipate we'll be bringing that one to you probably in September. So these would cover teachers, school psychologists, counselors, and our director of teaching.
Teacher evaluation document, you have a big hand in creating that. This is that document.
Yep, that is that document. We had a committee of teachers that sat down and really dove in and did a great job really capturing the art of being a teacher.
And he's dictating some of the staff evaluations that doesn't go as far as the superintendent. The evaluation tool used for that, to still up to us or something.
Yep, still up to us. And our administrator document will also still be up to us. I just want to make sure that any changes we make don't counteract something that they're suggesting or recommending.
Very comprehensive document. Something I know staff is very recently. Appreciate all the work, but I don't know if it goes into creating a document, but completing it for everybody in the building.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Consider motion to approve as presented. So moved.
Second.
Moved by John, second by Devin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is closed, unanimous vote to approve the evaluation documents for certificated staff.
Moving on to informational items. Informational item 6.1, review new and updated laws that impact our operations. Mrs. Jones.
These are quick. So these also come from KSB. They're discussion items. We took these to the policy committee and discussed what this might look like. The first one is recognition of Juneteenth as a holiday for our regular 12-month classified employees. That would be considered a paid holiday off. And so I listed all of the ones that are spelled out in the staff handbook. Also, child labor and employment certificates, just a reminder that students who are under the age of 16 are to have their employer complete an employment certificate and have it signed by the superintendent to comply with LDSAT 80. This responsibility falls on the employer. It's not a school responsibility other than my responsibility to review what's written and make sure that students are not being worked more than they should. And then a behavioral health point of contact. This was an LB 852, actually does not go into effect until next August, but I put it on here because we have a great process in place already for this. It requires each school district to designate one or more behavioral health points of contact for each school, and our school assigns our school counselors as the behavioral health points of contact, so we have 4 for their assigned grade. Any questions on those?
For the labor.
Yeah, so it's actually not new. It's an old thing. It just doesn't necessarily get covered very often. An employer wouldn't necessarily even know they're out of compliance unless they have a labor audit. They would ask to see that documentation.
Any other questions? Moving on to the reports. Mrs. Jones, can you take us to the reports, please?
We have any Board of Education reports? Okay. Administrative report. reports. You probably noticed that we're a few administrators short today. Two of them are at baseball games tonight, and Mr. Riker, I knew well in advance, was not able to join us. So just Mrs. Richardson, thanks for bearing it. Would you like to go through your report?
Sure, it's short and sweet tonight. Just a huge shout out to our custodial staff. They really work especially hard preparing the building. I feel like in the elementary, they know that summer school is working, and so they really work hard to make sure that everything is ready. Summer school started today, and our building looks shiny and clean and smells clean, and so just a shout out to them. And then the second piece is just a copy and paste from last month. We haven't done much with strategic plan, our specific committee in the last month, but it is still fresh on everyone's minds, and we're really looking into our next meeting together to discuss where we're going to go with website and possible elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Riker's update is just, I think we've mentioned in the last meeting that there were some changes at Mid-Plains that we were waiting to hear to make sure that our experience, our exploratory experience that we're providing for students was still a go, and it is. We're very excited about that. And then Sweet Foundations, parent communication document is being developed, and plans are in place to incorporate more career planning into the foundations process. This was a direct result of the action team, that strategy to action team. And then open house is right around the corner, if you can believe it or not. We'll have open house on Monday, August 15th, from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. And we have orientation for 7th and 9th grade students and any new students into the district. The change this year is that will be one meeting rather than separate meetings. I think that'll be good. Community vendors can contact the district office to request a table, and information will be available in both newspapers later this month. And of course, we have in-person administrator days returning party, July 28th through 30th. We are attending as a team. Mr. Marachek's report. South gym floor was waxed last Monday. North gym floor was waxed last week. We do have a few boards that were loose and needed replaced prior to the waxing, and things are looking really good down there. The multi-sports clinic is in July, or in Lincoln, July 26th through 28th. And we have 20 coaches that are planning to attend. All high school fall sports can begin conditioning the week of August 1st through 5th. And practice will officially start on August 8th. And this is McKenna's report. Testing my eyesight tonight. Strategy 1 update, the culture committee. They have been given their first mission, which is our back to school picnic that we have out in the lake. So appreciate all the help that you all provide for that evening, and hopefully them taking the prizes off the plate will be helpful, and we're pretty excited. Staff back to school celebration, as I just mentioned, August 3rd at Jeffrey Lake. And new paraprofessional Jennifer Royce is returning as a para in the elementary. She was part of our staff during the 2020-21 school year. Did an outstanding job, and we are thrilled to have her coming back. And then my reports, I'm going to be brief because I feel like I've talked a lot. School lunch, just a reminder that the last 2 years that has been a fully free program. We've had no reimbursement for that program the last 2 years. And the federal government is no longer providing that service. And so it will return to what it was pre-2020, which was you have to apply, and if you qualify, you will receive either free or reduced rates. I have those rates listed there. It's $1.65 for brunch, and it is $3 for students and $4 for adults for lunch. And we will allow families to apply, of course, at any point in the year. We will send out paperwork home to every single student and household at the beginning of the year and request that it be returned. A lot of times families think that they will not qualify, And then, of course, payment for meals, just a reminder that students are asked to have money in their accounts in advance. And if a student has no funds available to pay for a meal, they'll be provided the charge for a limited courtesy meal option. And then if they qualify for free meals, they will not be denied a reimbursable meal, even if they haven't included that. That's in our board policy, and I think just an important reminder as we transition from fully free to now having to think about for lunch there. Summer projects, our maintenance and custodial staff have been super busy, as Mrs. Richardson mentioned, but things are really coming together nicely. And then at some point, we'll need to set a day and a time for our budget workshop, which will be coming right around the corner. And that is coming up. We're all excited, can you tell? We all put it in our reports. Any questions on the administrative reports?
Budgetary impacts on the change in the school lunch program that now serves anticipated in the budget. That would probably happen at some point. So cover there.
Any other questions for Mrs. Nichols? Don't believe we have a need for executive session. Okay, moving on to our next meeting, Monday, August 8th. Anybody have a suggestion? I guess 6 o'clock we have suggested time, if that works for the board.
That sounds good, 6.
So a little different time. We have that day our community tour with our new staff will conclude at 5. So that'll give me a chance to go over here.
With that, we consider a motion to adjourn. Becky, second by Kyle, any further discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Voting is closed. Unanimous vote to adjourn at 6 o'clock.
Turn on the recording.